Alrighty, I got my Lenovo T440s out. I want to use this for a little bit of photo editing on the go, but there's one major problem. The screen is absolutely terrible. It's 1366 by 768 and it's a TN panel. It's got terrible color, terrible contrast, and terrible viewing angles. So we can swap that screen out. I bought this screen from Screen Country. It's not sponsored. This is just where a lot of people order screens from. And it turns out for me it worked out well because they ship out of Toronto. It was very quick. I ordered this screen basically in the afternoon and I got it at 10:30 a.m. the next day. As you can see, they have lots of screens in stock. This one's 1080p and IPS. This is a common replacement that people will put in their T440s. It is a direct swap, should be pretty easy. As for the battery, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but the exact same day that I got the screen shipped to me, I found a broken T440 in the recycling bin at work, and lo and behold, what did it have in it? Well, it had the extended optional battery. This battery is an option on the T440, T440S, possibly the T540 or maybe even the T450. I'm not sure. This battery works on several models. And again, this is the extended battery. So this is going to give at least a few extra hours to the battery runtime. And between that and the screen is really going to make this thing a lot better for doing photo editing on the go. So I'm not going to do a full tutorial video. Honestly, there's some good ones out there if you just search, replacing the screen on a T440. But basically I use the guitar pick to peel the front bezel. The bezel on this laptop is very thin, flimsy plastic. It's really just for looks. There's more of a structural one underneath that clips in, but this one is just stuck on. So basically just peel it off. Once that one's off, like I said, there's another sort of sub bezel inside. This is also screwed in through the screw mounts that mount the screen in. So there's 4 screws here to take the screen out, but again, you've got to take this inner bezel out first. And again, this one is snapped in place, so just be careful not to break any snaps. Before we go ahead and take the old screen out and put the new screen in, we want to make sure there's no power inside this motherboard. Even standby power, I don't want any power going through the 30-pin connector. It's a very small chance there could be damage, but when you're hooking it back up, especially if it's not lined up and you cross some of the pins, you could have some power go through something it's not supposed to. In theory, you could break the screen. You could even damage the video output circuitry on the motherboard, and if you do that, the laptop's toast. This laptop has 2 batteries, an external one that you can hot swap and an internal one that keeps the laptop powered up while you're hot swapping the external battery. But we want to make sure that internal battery has no power going through the motherboard, no standby power. And oddly enough, there's an option in the BIOS to disable the internal battery just for reasons like this when you're doing work on the motherboard. Now that the power's unhooked, we can unhook the old screen. It's got a little clip and this 30-pin connector comes out. And we can just basically swap the new screen in. It's basically just the reverse of taking the screen out. This is actually really easy. It only took me about 10 or 15 minutes. And I haven't done a laptop screen replacement in like 10 years. And even then, I've only ever done a few. So for someone who is new to this, it's very easy. It doesn't take long. And now we can swap the battery back in and try and power up the laptop, but it won't power on until it's plugged in. After we've told it to disable that internal battery, that option won't reset itself until you plug it into power, and that resets it. Now it can turn on. So here we're seeing the screen for the first time. I wasn't sure if I was going to have any issues with the internal screen changing, but it actually just booted right up and straight up changed the resolution to 1080p. So as you can see here, we are at 1080p. So here's a before at 1366 by 768, and just wait for it. Bam, 1920 by 1080. And again, here's the desktop. This is before the screen was changed. Again, this is 1366 by 768, but you can kind of see how washed out and blue it is. You know, I'm taking this from a slight angle looking down at the screen, but only very slightly. I could have made this look much worse by just angling the camera up even higher, because it's a TN panel, and the further you come off from, straight on angle, the worse this screen looks. So I could have made it look even worse, but I thought this was pretty fair. We're pretty much almost looking at the screen dead on, just from a slight angle from above. But here we go. Bam, there's the new screen, IPS. You can see the black levels got a lot better. The contrast got a lot better, and the colors got better. Keep in mind we're at 150% scaling, so everything didn't necessarily get smaller. If I set the scaling to 100%, obviously at 1080p, we would fit a lot more on the screen and everything would be smaller. One final thing I did, I read somewhere that after changing the screen, you should adjust the gamma setting in Windows, and so I did a screen calibration little wizard, and one of the steps in that was to adjust the gamma, and it gives you a little slider, and I found that did improve the black levels and the color even more. I mean, it already looked better having changed the screen, but this just tweaked it and got it even better looking. So this looks really good right now. Here's one final before and after. This is the screen and the battery. So this is before the screen was changed and the battery. And as you can see, at 78%, we were getting about 3 hours and 20 minutes. The most I ever got off the old battery was about 4 hours and 8 minutes, I think it was. And that was watching YouTube on Wi-Fi with the screen at like 60 or 70% brightness. And here's the new battery and the new screen. So as you can see, the contrast and the sharpness and everything looks better. But also, still at 78% battery life, we've gone up to 5 hours and 47 minutes. So we've added at least a few hours to the battery life. So here's just a final look at the laptop. Scrolling through YouTube, the performance on this laptop still holds up fairly well. Again, this is a 4th generation Core i5. I believe it's a 4300U. Don't quote me on that, but it's got 8 gigabytes of RAM and a 120 gigabyte Kingston solid state drive. It's got a really nice keyboard. I love the keyboard on it. The keyboard on this laptop is better than most modern laptops. Easily, by far, hands down, no contest. It's got a great keyboard on it. It's fairly lightweight considering its age. It was considered an ultrabook for its time. Yeah, it's going to be pretty decent for basic photo editing on the go. And yeah, I really like this laptop, and I'm glad I decided to soup this one up rather than buy something new, because I did look at buying something new, something like, an Asus VivoBook, even with an 11th gen Core i3, which would be faster than this 4th generation Core i5, and it's got 8 hours battery life. It's a little bit thinner and a little bit lighter than this even is. And, for $450, I had considered it, but you know what? I'm glad I put the money into this. Again, the battery was free. I found it in the freaking garbage. Well, recycling. It was in recycling. But nonetheless, that battery is not the original battery from that T440. The original owner must have replaced it at some point. It's not an OEM battery. It is an aftermarket battery, but it's working great. It had a full charge in it when I pulled it out of the recycling bin. So anyways, got lucky with the battery. The screen only cost like $110, and I think it was like $15 shipping. So really, that's all I put into this laptop. It was like $125 to upgrade that screen, and it was well worth it. Some people might be like, why would you put money into that old laptop? Like I said, this thing still performs better than expected, and it's super clean inside. The fan's clean as a whistle. Everything in it works really well. The internal battery was recently replaced. Yeah, with this screen in it now and that battery life, it's getting 8 hours battery life, real world use, watching YouTube on Wi-Fi, etc. It's actually a really good laptop, and I like it. So I'm glad I put the money into it. It was definitely worth it for that screen. It made a huge difference, and yeah, that's it. And again, it was easy to do. So if you have an old laptop like a T440, T450, and it's got the shitty screen in it, it's worth doing. See you guys later.